Happy Veterans Day, and thank you to all you veterans who served our country. We do appreciate you. We'll have a story later in the show explaining how this holiday came to be, as well as a trip to the KGW Vault that you don't want to miss. In the meantime, you may have noticed we had kind of a big election last week. Now that the dust has started to settle and the commercials are back to normal, we thought this would be a time to take a look at what the results tell us about a lot of different issues. And that, my friends, is our big story tonight. The huge development nationally, of course, was Donald Trump winning the presidency in resounding fashion. In fact, according to vote totals nationwide as of Friday morning, Trump lost ground in Washington state compared to the 2020 election, but that is the only state where that happened. According to an analysis of AP data by the Financial Times, in every other state, the president-elect gained ground this time around, whether he won the state or not. This is based on preliminary data, as most states have at least some more time to count their votes and certify. So, what does another Trump presidency mean for you and I in Oregon, or even in parts of the Northwest in general? Well, I took that question to Jim Moore. He's a political scientist from Pacific University.
So people are using the word wave a lot. This is not a wave. It's a very close election. But at this, as we're speaking, it does look like the Republicans will probably have control of the House and definitely have control of the Senate. So what does it mean in terms of just the closeness of the election? Because that's not very much movement. Remember, in the Senate, you have to have 60 votes to do anything because of the filibuster. If you're going to do other things, remember Biden had the initiative that dealt with inflation and green projects and things like that. They turned it into a fiscal plan, a budget plan, and that has slightly different rules. So the Trump people would have to do that to pass anything major through the Senate. In the House, the Republicans, even if they have a majority, remember the Republican Congress, basically the one that just finished, they couldn't pick a speaker for days. They got rid of a speaker. They couldn't pass major legislation because there was always a group of anywhere from 5 to about 40 Republicans who said, no, we want more. So they're going to have a lot of party discipline to make things happen.
So what he's saying is, whether you're excited or worried about the Republicans controlling the presidency and Congress, tone it down a little bit. The new president will not be able to move as fast as you might think. But it is likely we will eventually feel the impacts of his policies.
Well, there's kind of two main things to look at. So the first thing is kind of everybody's daily life. And remember, the president is actually pretty far removed from most people's daily lives. But will the Trump tax cut be renewed? That's kind of the first big test coming up here. Then secondly, there are sets of issues that are important. So in Oregon and Washington, you've got all the federal lands. Are we going to allow more timber cutting? Are we going to increase the grazing? Will there be mining? Those kinds of things. Not so important in the Portland metro area, but when you get out into some of the more rural areas, especially in Eastern Oregon, can make a big difference. And then there's kind of a third set of things, the immigration idea. If there's going to be truly mass deportations and things like that, there's a lot of towns in Oregon and Washington that are going to be in a load of hurt because their workforce is going to diminish. And there still are not enough people to fill those jobs right now. It's going to hit them really hard. Look, especially in the construction industry, a lot of agricultural kinds of things, agricultural processing, those are going to be hit really hard with the Trump policies.
Now, moving on to the Oregon legislature in Salem, the professor was watching for change, but actually saw little.
The state politics, the Republicans tried once again to break out of the 40 to 45% range in statewide races. Lathrop was barely able to do it, but the Democrats always get 50%-ish, and they all got 50%-ish and they won, so no change there. And then the state legislature, where there could have been some real movement, hardly any movement whatsoever. Republicans lose one seat that was expected in the Bend area in the Senate. So in the Senate, it's now a supermajority, 18-12 for the Democrats. But in the House, the Republicans kept the battleground seat. And so it's still 35-25, no supermajority. So very little change there. The remarkable thing to me about the state legislative races, though, there was no campaigning on big issues. When the Democrats win, this is what we're going to do. We've had this in past years. We're going to do climate policy. We're going to do the tax system. We're going to look at land use. None of that. And so we're waiting to see what they're going to do. It seems like transportation is going to be the big focus, but that was not central to the campaigns at all, which is a big, big, big change.
Well, and I think it wasn't central because it means you and I are going to pay more money.
Yeah, exactly. And I saw that. I was giving talks all over the place, and especially anywhere kind of from McMinnville along I-205 to the airport. Boy, a lot of vote for this person and don't have any tolls.
And we've heard that from you as well. Finally, we talked about Portland's historic experiment with ranked choice voting and multi-winner races. I told the professor, didn't really seem to me to create results that would have been any different from our normal elections.
No, I don't think there's any difference whatsoever. The classic case is the mayor's race, where Keith Wilson had kind of a 2-to-1 advantage in first place votes. And guess what? When you went through all the 19 cycles, he won. Big surprise. And the same kind of thing happened in city council races. If you look at the people who have basically been called for each of the districts, they were usually the top 3 in the first round. So I don't think it did anything at that level. What it did do, especially in the city council races, it changed the tenor of the election. The election was not, I want to sabotage somebody else. The election was, here's who I am. And often groups of candidates got together and kind of ran as a slate. And so that's fascinating and much more positive. We saw a little bit of sabotaging going on in the mayor's race. There was a coalition of people that said anybody but Rene Gonzalez to keep him off the ballot. I don't think that was fundamental to his losing the race, but that kind of thing did happen. So I think it's a mixed bag at this point. We'll have to wait and see as we move forward. Now, Keith Wilson is an outsider. You would not have expected him to be able to play a role, to win. But I think the things that got him in there were not the ranked choice voting system. I think it was his own candidacy, the clarity of his idea about dealing with the homeless population, whether you agree with it or not, it was darn clear. And that Oregonian poll that all of a sudden he was credible, that had him getting a bunch of second and third place votes. And people looked and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to give him first place votes. And that's what got him through.
All right, so that's the professor's take. What about yours? Did you take part in ranked choice voting? If so, did you find it too confusing and you just skipped it altogether? Do you have any other feedback from the election results? Let us know, will you? You know we love your feedback. Send us an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or you could call and leave a voicemail. The phone number is 503-226-5090. I do look forward to hearing from you. And remember, it's a big, big tent we have here. Everyone's welcome. We do not cater to one political agenda or the other. Moving on. Over the weekend, the Oregonian called almost all of the races for the new Portland City Council. We have 10 preliminary candidates tonight, with 2 races still considered too close to call, and the elections office is closed today for Veterans Day. In District 1, Candace Avalos and Loretta Smith have secured their seats on the council. The third seat is still a little bit close to call for Jamie Dunphy. In District 2, Samir Kanal, Ilana Perlgini, and current Commissioner Dan Ryan will represent North and Northeast Portland. In District 3, the Oregonian has called the race for Tiffany Kamaya Lane, Angelita Murillo, and former City Commissioner Steve Novick. In District 4, Olivia Clark and Mitch Green have won their seats, but the third is still a bit close to call for Eric Zimmerman, who's in the lead. Let's turn now to a big change that's starting tomorrow in the city of Portland. That's when the Portland Bureau of Transportation is going to start towing vehicles that have no visible license plate or VIN number right there on the spot. They're not going to wait around. They're not going to give warnings. They're not going to give people time to make it right. It's tow time. At least that's how they're making it sound. Blair Best has our story.
Northeast Sunderland Avenue looks like many Portland streets, lined with old RVs and derelict cars. Starting this week, that could change. Following changes to city code, Portland's Bureau of Transportation will start automatically towing vehicles that have no visible license plate or VIN number. But for many people on this stretch,
it's not fair.
It's their home we're talking about.
I mean, we work hard for what we do have out here, and to lose it is bull.
Roughly 20% of those on the streets in Multnomah County live in a vehicle, according to county data.
I think it's to the reason why. Everybody's trying to vibe on the streets.
I don't have anywhere else to go. I don't have anything else but this.
For 3 months, Megan has knowingly, illegally kept her RV in a no parking zone next to the city-run Safe Rest Park for vehicles that she hopes to get into one day.
I have a VIN number, yeah, I don't have a license plate. It hasn't been registered since 1989.
A Peabody officials say this change allows them to clear vehicles like Megan's that are in violation of city code and on a public right-of-way.
Oh, I think it will make it better.
It's a problem Suzanne Rollins has been dealing with for years.
Many of the people with trailers have cars, and they're parked on a long line in front of my house. We've gotten multiple notices from the post office that they can't deliver our mail because there's somebody parked right in front of the post, our mailbox.
Well, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing because they can tow anybody's car, but yet if it's a stolen car and everything, people need to get back to property. That's the good thing and bad.
Yet the question remains, what happens to people once their vehicles are towed? Peabody did not respond to KGW's interview request on Monday.
And I feel like if they do that, there has to be immediate help.
All right, so again, this new rule change is for all vehicles that either don't have a visible license plate or a VIN number. So if you believe your vehicle has been towed, you can contact Portland Police to figure out how to get it back. Blair Best, KGW News.
Thank you, Blair. Coming up next on The Story, we have some Veterans Day stories that you're going to love, how the holiday came to be, and we'll take you into the KGW Vault for a look back to the late 70s in Portland. And have you ever heard of the Grand Army of the Republic? It's a certain group of veterans that had quite the presence here in Oregon. We'll have the details when The Story returns. Veterans Day is celebrated every year on November 11th. But why today? How did we get here? We have to go back, way back to 1918 for the answer. World War I was just coming to an end. The armistice with Germany went into effect on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. So, 11 o'clock on November 11th. It did not become an annual holiday, though, until 1926 under President Calvin Coolidge. And an act of Congress calling for November 11th to be observed as, quote, a day to be dedicated to the cause of world peace and to be thereafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day. Then there was another World War. And in 1945, a veteran named Raymond Weeks from Alabama thought Armistice Day ought to celebrate all veterans, not just those who fought in the First World War. Weeks led the first national celebration in 1947. The day was officially renamed Veterans Day in 1954 at the urging of U.S. veteran organizations. And as for why Veterans Day doesn't have an apostrophe before or after the S, well, the Department of Veterans Affairs says it's, quote, because it is not a day that belongs to veterans. It is a day for honoring all veterans. And honor them we do. Today, we also ventured into the KGW Vault, where we have decades of old footage that's rarely used anymore. We were on the hunt for anything from Veterans Day of the past, and we came across this report from KGW's Don Porter from nearly 50 years ago. Veterans Day in Portland, 1977.
For these local veterans of World War I, November 11th will always be Armistice Day, a celebration of the end of the war to end all wars. This morning, a small group of veterans, their families and friends, gathered at the Ross War Memorial on Sandy Boulevard for a flag raising dedicated to the memory of all those who gave up their lives in the service of their country.
How about that? Now it's your turn to chime in on this Veterans Day. Maybe you have a loved one who's a veteran, a friend, a neighbor, and you want to honor them for their service. Share those words with us, will you? And tomorrow we'll feature some of your emails and voicemails. If you're able to include a photo of that person in an email, even better. Send those emails to thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a short voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. All right, now let's do a little digging for old, shall we? Veterans Day style. As we searched through the Oregon Historical Society's online collection, we came across this ribbon from a century ago, 1924. This was for the 43rd Annual Convention of the Oregon branch of a group called the Grand Army of the Republic. Now, there's a good chance our younger viewers have never heard of that because I'm 62 and I've never heard of it. But the Grand Army of the Republic was basically the main veterans organization that was formed in the wake of the Civil War. It kicked off in 1866, and membership reached its peak in 1890 with over 400,000 veterans. First formed to support those who fought in the Civil War, it quickly turned into a political powerhouse. Think of it as sort of a union that fought for veterans' benefits. The annual state and national meetings were called encampments, and cities all across the country hosted the veterans, including right here in Oregon. The national encampment in 1918, in fact, was held here in Portland. But the state encampments in Oregon had been happening long before that. The first one in Portland in late September of 1882. This is the cover page of nearly 500-page book that was published in 1883 that recounts the first and second encampments of the Oregon branch. The Oregon Historical Society has dozens of items related to the Oregon chapter of the Grand Army of the Republic. And when it comes to the ribbon that we showed you, this one from 1924, that encampment was held in Hillsboro, and more than 300 Union veterans attended. There was a parade and sing-along, and some of the veterans in town had actually literally shaken hands with Abraham Lincoln. The group is no longer around today. The final Grand Army of the Republic encampment was held in Indiana in 1949. The last member of the Oregon branch died the following year, and the last member of the entire organization lived to be 109 years old, dying in 1956. And that's when the Grand Army of the Republic was no more. But there is certainly still a legacy from that group that extends to today. The Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War has a chapter that covers Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. It's called the Department of the Columbia. And if you've ever driven along Boone's Ferry Road in southwest Portland, you may have seen this sign. It's for the Grand Army of the Republic Cemetery, which is near the Greenwood Hills and the Riverview cemeteries. The land was purchased in 1882 by a group of 14 Civil War veterans who called themselves the Grand Army Cemetery Association. A notable person buried there is Salmon Brown. He's the son of famous abolitionist John Brown. The cemetery was acquired by Multnomah County in 1971. Coming up next on the story, we're heading northwest to Whidbey Island and a site within a cove that has not been seen in decades. What experts have to say about why a pod of orcas ventured there when the story returns. We're going to end on some good news tonight in the Northwest, specifically Whidbey Island's Penn Cove. Orca lovers believe history was made after they reported sightings of the southern resident orcas going far into the cove for the first time in more than 50 years. Erica Zucco with our Environment Northwest team has our story.
Seeing a pod of orcas is really special anytime, but this was a momentous, historic occasion that people got to celebrate together. This is a site that has eluded shoreline whale watchers at Penn Cove for decades. Southern resident orcas active at the surface of these waters. Kat Martin took this video shoulder to shoulder with other orca lovers, knowing this was a moment to remember.
We were all taken aback. This was history in the making. This is the first time in 54 years that these whales had come back to this cove in particular. We followed them down all the way to the Coupeville Wharf and watched them as they made a beautiful pass, spy hopping, tail lobbing.
King 5 reported on orca captures in the 70s here at Penn Cove, where businesses rounded up whales, killing several of them as they captured others, including then-calf Tokate, who was put on display for years at the Miami Seaquarium. The Lummi Nation and others fought for decades for her return before her death in 2023. The Orca Conservancy says orcas are cultural animals that pass down information from generation to generation, and southern residents have not been seen in Penn Cove since. But earlier this week, they were spotted.
And I said, oh my God, look there, right there, let's go. And we watched as these whales got closer and closer into Penn Cove. We had our cameras at the ready, and they finally crossed that threshold.
It's unclear why they chose to return. Experts say it's possible they were looking for a place to get out of wind and rest, or that younger generations are open to exploring new places. Martin says she hopes people who see her video are made aware of the continued endangered status of southern residents.
If you can do anything at all, just do it. If you're out there on a boat, be whale-wise, be boat-friendly to these animals. Give them their distance. They need a quieter space to live.
How about that? That's pretty amazing, huh? That was Erica Zucco reporting. And that's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. But remember, the story, our collective story, that never ends. It goes on and on. For those of you watching live, Straight Talk with Laurel Porter's coming your way next. And don't forget, you can stream the story anytime you want on your own schedule. Download the free KGW Plus app, available now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.